I'll call to order our City Council meeting. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sylvia, roll call.
Mayor Clark.
Here.
Council President Harris.
Here.
Councilor King.
Here.
Councilor Kuiper.
Here.
Councilor Robinson will be joining us shortly, Mayor. Councilor Garland.
Here.
And Councilor Young.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Consent agenda, approval of June 1st, 2017 City Council meeting minutes. Approval of June 6, 2017 City Council meeting minutes. Approval of June 13th, 2017 City Council meeting minutes. Resolution 2017-043, authorizing the city manager to sign a renewal intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with the Washington County Emergency Management Cooperative. Resolution 2017-044, certifying the provision of certain municipal services in order to qualify the city to receive state revenues. Resolution 2017-045, authorizing the mayor to sign an updated urban planning area agreement between the city of Sherwood and Washington County. Resolution 2017-046, appointing Donna Van de Kieft to the Library Advisory Board. Resolution 2017-047, creating a new special revenue fund, the Grants Fund. Resolution 2017-048, appropriating funds for the refinancing of water debt. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Citizen comments. Do I have any citizen comment forms? Thank you. Pat Denan?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the third time I've come before your council, and I'm a little disappointed as a citizen by not getting any response back other than from the mayor saying that she would not deal with this issue because it was not a city issue. This is dealing with your municipal court. Under 810-375, the ORS, it isn't qualified to hear traffic violations based on the law on ORS 801-545. You can do, or you can do traffic crimes, but I've not had, and under the charter, the city charter, you're responsible for the actions of the court and of the judge. And I'm really disappointed that I haven't heard it because you're processing $1 million of our citizens' money through this court, and you're not a court of records. You're not registered with the Supreme Court, and nobody's shown me where you are qualified. And it's your responsibility as the chamber, the citizens, to say that we are, or you are, or you aren't. So I'd appreciate a letter saying you are, and showing where in the law that you qualify as a court of records, that you can handle traffic violations based on the law 801-3545. The other thing is, when I was in court on the 3rd, your judge, Mr. Morrison, turned around, and when I asked him if he was a court of records and he was qualified, the court was qualified, he said, yes, it was. It's under ORS 153. He would not provide me the information. The following week, I did the same thing. I wrote to him, and you can verify this with your city, your court administrator. I asked him about that question, and he denied me. I had 2 subpoena witnesses. Both of them were considered experts, and he refused to let me have witnesses that I subpoenaed to defend myself in a court. We don't have a jury in a court. We don't have attorneys in court. We, the citizens, go against the officer. The judge is supposed to be a neutral third party. He refused to hear my witness. And when I questioned him, he said, I will only accept legal licensed attorneys as experts. And I don't think there's anybody in this room has ever seen a licensed attorney as an expert witness in a courtroom. I haven't, and I've got a few years into it. But again, he violated my rights by not letting me defend myself. And I think that that has to be addressed by your council. The Judicial Fitness Committee doesn't deal with municipal court judges. I seek an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Boyle?
Is it okay if I hand these out first?
Go ahead and give them to our city recorder, and she'll get them to us.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 years ago, I sat in this chair for the first time, and I talked about tiny houses, or more specifically, the tiny house that I was building at the time just up the street. And although not much has changed with regard to my options and ability to legally occupy my tiny house within the city limits of Sherwood, a lot has changed for tiny houses in other cities and other towns around the United States. And a lot has changed for me personally as well. Since finishing my first tiny house in November of 2014, I have embraced and have been embraced by the tiny house movement. I have been invited to attend events in Colorado, California, Vermont, South Carolina, Georgia, to tell my personal story and give advice to others who want to build their own. In March, my tiny house was featured in Costco Connection magazine, and a couple of weeks ago it was featured on MSN. Just last week, the MSN journalist wrote me to tell me that my recent story has so far reached 3.2 million people in the UK, Canada, and the United States. But notably, the recent press attention pales in comparison to the countless articles that have been written about my story, my tiny houses, and my advocacy work. It has been translated already into a half dozen languages, including German, Italian, and Spanish. Last year, House Beautiful magazine listed my tiny house as the #4 most popular tiny house of the year, based on the internet interest they received after they featured my empty nest. And I'm not even close to winding down yet. These days, when I'm not working on building my second and my third tiny house, you can find me writing for Tiny House magazine or hosting the very popular Tiny House podcast. I guess what I'm trying to say, albeit in a very long-winded and self-promoted kind of way, is that a lot of eyes and ears are on Sherwood, Oregon, this little town where I live. Believe it or not, Sherwood and the tiny house movement actually have a lot in common. They both struggle with issues that popularity and growth brings. They both have constituents who disagree about simple attributes like identity and goals. However, what the tiny house movement has, which Sherwood has yet to fully embrace, is a solution to the challenge of providing affordable and diverse housing. Earlier this year, the IRC, the federal level of building code authority on which most building codes are modeled, adopted Appendix V, which includes a definition for movable tiny houses. Last week, Oregon House Bill 2737, which requires the Director of Consumer and Business Services to adopt construction standards for tiny homes, was approved by a margin of 56-2. So while similar municipalities like Sherwood struggle to identity or embrace building codes and zoning codes which allow tiny houses, I'm here to announce that the rules are already changing at higher levels of government. Personally, I celebrate these changes, and I think they're a good solution. But what now? What can Sherwood do to take this tiny ball and run with it? Rather than suggest to you the leaders of Sherwood do all the work on figuring out how to integrate them into our neighborhoods, I'm here with a proposed solution, aka the Fresno Code. What started as a discussion in Fresno, California about how to address the issues of affordable housing ended up being a somewhat elegant solution that other cities have already adopted. Last week, I visited our planning department and discovered that our current zoning codes are scheduled to be reviewed. This review will be comprehensive, but will take several months to review, change, and approve. That's how the wheels of change work. I totally understand that. I'm just not willing to wait that long. And I bet you're not willing or happy about waiting that long to address affordable housing either. And now you know that a potentially shorter path exists, and perhaps you won't need to wait that long. It may not be a perfect solution, but can give your citizens and our citizens an option before that they didn't have. I brought with me several copies of the articles and an outline of the code for your review. I'm here to ask you, to implore you, to read and ask and push and advocate with me to consider tiny houses on wheels as an ADU option for our seniors, our young adults, our families, and our disadvantaged citizens. Yes, I'm asking, but I'm also offering. I'm offering my help, my time, and my knowledge of tiny houses.
Michelle, your time is up, so
Thank
could
you.
you just wrap up?
Sure. In conclusion, I'm also here to personally invite you to Tiny Fest on July 1st from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is happening right here in Parker Stables. I sincerely hope you can all find time to attend the free event, meet the filmmakers, tour a tiny house or 3, and help us make the world a better place one tiny house at a time.
Thank you. Eugene Stewart?
Eugene Stewart, here to invite the council and staff to the reopening of the Sherwood Senior Center. They're going to be serving pulled pork and barbecued brisket. We're hoping that everything starts out. We would like to thank the city for taking on. It's a big responsibility. One of the other things that I'd like to ask you to consider in the near future is to have a visioning process for the senior center, because it's going to be kind of a hectic takeoff, but you have a great person up there to take charge, and she's full of energy, and she's got more energy than most of us, and I don't know how she does it sometimes, as I'm sure some of you have found. The other thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is traffic. It just seems to keep getting worse and worse. And there was an article put out by Washington County where a joint project was undertaken by the City of Hillsborough, Washington County, State of Oregon, I forget which road, but one of their major bottlenecks over there, and they seem to be able, by putting everybody ponying some money up to relieve a problem. One of the things I see is that we're planning to expand our water capacity, but yet we're not planning to expand our traffic capacity. We seem to be out of touch somewhat. I was at a meeting the other day, and I asked them what the volume of traffic on 99W was, and the answer I got from the traffic consultant for the high school, new high school, was 35,000. But yet, if you look, the state of Oregon shows it anywhere from 50 to 60,000 cars. So if they're planning it's only 35,000, we're in real trouble if they're not being realistic with the traffic out there. One of the things is that we've seen Dundee and Newburgh, how long they've been fighting to get that bypass around, and now it's only going to be about half complete once they do get it, and hopefully it'll solve some of the problems. But it seems like Sherwood needs to look at that too, and if they need maybe to start setting some money aside so they can plan a joint project with Washington County and the state to try to get some traffic to go around Sherwood instead of through Six Corners where the bottleneck is. And probably 90% of those people don't want to stop and sit there. They want to just get from Newburgh into Portland or vice versa. So that's all. Thank you.
Gene, I heard pulled pork, but I didn't hear date and time. I'm going to need to know that.
The time, noon.
Noon, what date?
July 1st.
All right, thank you. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
What time? I believe they're Monday, July 1st.
July 3rd, okay.
Okay, excuse
All
me.
right, we've
you're
got a
right.
confirmation.
Monday, July 3rd.
July
Right.
3rd,
July
pulled pork.
3rd. Right.
Don't miss it.
Don't
Okay.
miss it.
Thanks, Gene. All right, I don't see any other comment. All right, I'll close the public comment section. Thank you. And we'll move on to presentations. Mini float. So we're doing a special recognition tonight. I have to pull my glasses on and off, but will Jason Burgess, Leah Burgess, and Mary Wegland come on up? And we're going to recognize everybody because there are many others here that have contributed, but I want these three in particular. You get the hot seat. Oh, wait a minute. We need another chair for the hot seat.
We can share.
So these are our amazing float creators and builders. They were the steelheaders this year for our Portland Rose Festival float, and as you can see behind me, it was outstanding. It highlighted our festival coming up, the Sherwood Wine Festival. It's this Friday, Saturday, and I'm expecting a major crowds because of this amazing float. And the only thing that you can't see in these pictures is our counselor, Jennifer Kuiper, as Lucille Ball crushing the grapes in the rear of that barrel. So that was something. You can see the amazing holder for her built by Steel Tech so that she was safe. And there's the photo of the other side. And that amazing butterfly actually was automated and moved. That's how cool this float was. So I heard a rumor that we somehow exceeded the size and were disqualified. That's a lie. You know, it's amazing how many rumors you hear here and there, here and there. No, we were just so amazingly outstanding that they gave us the Parade Chair Award, Most Outstanding Use of Creativity. And that's not a lie. So these awesome costumes were hilarious too, and they danced all around. And I will tell you that the crowds loved this theme. In fact, up and down the streets, they were asking us for wine samples. What?
You would have won more prizes.
I know, right? But you guys, so how many hours did you put into this?
Oh my goodness. Oh.
And everything is covered by natural services, understand. These were all of those, and those are not, as you might think, the grapes on them they are not buff puffs. They are handmade. People asked them if they were buff puffs. They were not. They were handmade. Everything on this was handmade and dyed and re-dyed and let's try it. And they were telling me about they were at each other's houses and trying to get the dyes correct. And
We're bad scientists, Mary and I, coming up with all of our color concoctions.
But this, and I have to give a personal shout out to Jason because he was such a champion when the float that was supposed to be in front of us that ended up behind us, the float, one of the chairs came to us and said, they can't start their float, so you're going to have to tow. What? Tow? Really? Tow? And so for my very first marshalling and I don't think it was your first drive, but the first drive of this float that has very low side sightage, we actually towed another float behind us and all the way through, turns and all. So I would run ahead so that they could actually see me because they couldn't see me from the side, and give them the and he'd slowly crank it around, and we didn't run over any feet or children. So yay you.
Good job.
And yeah, big, oh my God. It was a little nip and tuck, and we made it super fun for the announcers because they thought they would look, and if they were, it was funny because if they were if they were print announcers, they would announce the other float. If they were newscasters, they would catch it, and they go, that is not I do not see a motocross there. I see some wine, and they'd flip it, and they would announce us. But sometimes we were announced as the Sherwood Wine Festival as we were leaving. But, you know, it was still our brilliant wine country in the rear. So you guys went above and beyond, hours and hours and hours. And like I said, over 250,000 people watch the Portland Rose Festival or attend. And so this was a huge Sherwood shout out. I cannot thank you enough. And I want everyone else who was involved, because I see one of the grapes back there. Yes, I do. There she is. You can, Christy. Woo! Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And the builders, I actually glued right next to these lovely ladies here. And I want to thank you all. This has been such a joy for Sherwood to be involved in. And Leah, you are the one who really knows sort of off the top of your head, I hate to do this to you, but the list of the donations. So I only said one of the Steel Tech, but we had a lot of donations. So please.
Absolutely. This was definitely a collaborative effort.
Okay.
Yes. No, definitely look at the end result. So I want to thank Home Depot, and I want to thank Sherwin-Williams. They donated paint to make the colors pop. Even though everything is covered organically, you still have to have that foundation to make everything work great. And the building and materials resources place, they donated. We would just walk in, they'd be like, what do you need? You wouldn't even know that our wine glasses are constructed out of donated planter boxes from Home Depot and then trash can lids from that recycled place. So, it was a really creative effort by everyone here and everyone who contributed, and we are so appreciative. And Fox Towing, they towed us there and back on the house, and so they just, and their staff were amazing. Yeah. Can we just give it up for everyone who did this? And Al's gave us all these beautiful shrub and flowers to make it just pop even more, and then Allison over at It's All Arranged donated her services to just make it just come to life. This was really, and Jen for just crushing it literally for 2 hours.
She was getting so tired, but it was so much fun.
I know we were making jokes about her legs hurting, but I know they truly were. So thank you, Jen Kuiper, for walking those 2 miles.
Killed it, and I thought it was so fun just being up there on the float with you guys, walking and getting the crowd excited with the mayor in the front. It was just a great group effort, so it was a lot of fun. So kudos to you guys. It was awesome.
Thank you. And thanks for Steel Tech for keeping Jen in place the whole time.
Yeah. We do not want people counselors falling off the float. That'd be bad. That'd be bad. So thank you. I just wanted to highlight because I really cannot thank you enough, and I cannot wait to see the attendance at the wine festival this year. So, Joe?
So I want to just say a couple things, and this is really Leah and Mary and everybody. This came together. When did I come talk to you approximately?
May 1st.
May 1st.
Not that she's paying
attention.
The fated day of May 1st.
May 3rd was
so this is the third year we've done a float, and I think we've done it differently every year. And we get better and better every year. But, I kind of threw this at Leah and her team at a very late notice, and, I said, we're the defending champs. We've got to figure this out. And
bring it.
And, of course, I also told her, so how much money do I have? Not a lot. You got to figure it out. So I really want to applaud the work that went into this, and they took it on. They'd never at least I never saw them go, oh my God, how are we going to get this done? They really took the challenge on and worked hard, and we got a whole slew of new volunteers that had not worked previously, and each year it's kind of a different story, but things come together. And I want to put a plug in for next year, because next year is our 125th birthday as a city. So that is our theme next year. I don't know what the vision of the float's going to be, but somehow we've got some time to think about how we identify 125 years of Sherwood as a city and make that the theme for next year. So
fantastic. And if you haven't been involved before, I think that the people in front of you can tell you it is super fun and super community building, and it's a wonderful community effort. So awesome. Thank you. All right. Oh, question?
2 questions. Who did your design? Did you guys
Well,
design
initially,
it yourself?
I think Counselor Kuiper, she came to us with the concept that she drew up, and we kind of put our own spin on it. So Jen came to it. We had an initial meeting, and she's like, well, here are a couple of sketches that we've been working on. And then Mary and I, we had our meeting with them as well, and we're like, you know what? just give us like a couple of days. We kind of want to play with it and add to it and just make it kind of grow and make it more whimsical and more playful. And that's how the idea and the vision came to life. And it was really collaborative. I can't say it was just like one person. Oh, cool. There was just so many ideas. And even that butterfly that we had on there, Jason built that, like, literally. We had our volunteers help us mache the body and everything, but he built that thing in like 2 days before the parade was, because we wanted it to be just magical for the float, and just adding that element to it just really brought it to life. It just made it so cool. So, I mean, it was never just one person's vision on this float, so.
And then, just out of curiosity, because driving floats is not a super common practice, it's not your first float driving experience?
No.
He said that.
No, not my first float driving experience.
Interesting.
It won't be my last either. It was
Where were you? Where was your line of vision on this float? I can't imagine.
Just
it.
right, straight ahead.
It was the mayor.
Running.
And then if she moved, it was nobody. Probably small moments of panic in between.
So,
But,
did your head peek out anywhere on this float?
What?
I mean,
Where's your
So-
head?
Yeah, where are you
Where were
seeing?
you?
So he had flowers attached
right
to
at
him.
the base of that corkscrew
Yeah.
would be where my head was. Or no, the other side, sorry. The base of the handle shooting downward would have been where my head was.
Okay.
And if you look at another photo, I had a bouquet of flowers shoved into my
We have the
shirt.
group shot that has everyone in front of the
Yeah.
No, the other one,
The other one,
the wide one.
I was impressed with the butterfly head,
That
too.
one.
I mean,
You
Yeah.
can see that I
Yeah.
part of the vegetation. Yeah.
wanted to blend in as much as possible.
that's taking one for the team.
I wore that all day long. Didn't get any allergies.
Even at breakfast.
Hey, you even ate breakfast in it.
I wore that at first. We went to Denny's. That didn't work out, right? And we went to Burgerville. Yeah, we got a lot of looks.
Oh, we got there at a little bit before 6.
We dropped the float off at the Coliseum. We got there at like 8, and then we stayed there till like midnight, just prepping it and getting it ready. And then we went home,
Took a power nap.
back to Hillsboro.
Power nap.
We slept for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then went back to the parade by 5 a.m. So it was fun.
We're just deranged.
So this was my first time getting to come volunteer a little bit for a couple hours, and it's a lot of floral paint,
Yes.
spray paint. Your finger gets sore.
Yeah, it does.
Those
I know
sides.
The side panels, yeah, side
Yes.
panel on the top are all covered in moss because there's certain regulations and rules you
Right.
have to follow. I mean, there's a handbook, people, okay? Building a floral parade float. And so we had to use color tool spray, which is for floral
Yeah.
purposes. So, man, our volunteers, I know, I remember some people just had to stop, like, I give up.
I think the next day my finger was like still sore. I'm like,
I know. Okay, you did a good
thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
My pain finger's numb. I can't feel my finger. I know. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. New business, Resolution 2017-049, transferring budget expenditure appropriations between categories for fiscal year 2016-17.
So how do I follow?
I know.
We have numbers, people, numbers. Okay, so some of us get excited about numbers.
I know. Where's your little butterfly? Yeah.
So,
I know. Oh no.
I know, watch what you ask for. Okay, so this first item of new business has to do, we have a lot about budget this evening, but this is an item for the current year budget, the 16-17 budget, as opposed to next year. Now, keep in mind that this is a very common adjustment. Most cities do one towards the end of the year, and this has to do with moving items around to true things up. We're not asking for more budget authority. We're not doing a hearing. This technically could be passed in consent, but we do want the citizens to be aware of what is happening. So this is just truing all the lines up. So I wanted to point out about 3 different categories that there are in this adjustment. The first is that there are always some unanticipated items that happen. And this is why we have a contingency in operating funds, because things come up that we don't anticipate, that you can't know when you're doing the budget in March and April of what's going to happen the following May and June. Stuff happens. So this has several different items. We have, for example, some people's life situation changes, and you might need to have a qualifying event so that the insurance changes on an employee. That can have a dramatic change, in this case $14,000. So just one change can have that big of an impact. We also had a financial system update. At the time when it was planned, we thought we were going with a 2013. It was, oh, while we're at it, there's been a new version, we'll just do 2016. Oh, well, guess what? That adds about $30,000 onto the project that was not anticipated, had to happen because of a version change in the middle. So these are the types of unanticipated changes that happen. The second type are corrections. Now, this is the type of adjustment that we hope to see diminish and possibly go completely away. The reason that we have those here is, first of all, because we've had 3 finance directors in the course of about a year, so you have different eyes looking at things differently. We also have the fact that a lot of our budget preparation is done in spreadsheets. And so these spreadsheets have formulas embedded in formulas. One person starts them, it gets passed off to another person who then modifies it, it gets passed off to another finance director who adds to it. So embedded within these spreadsheets are a lot of calculations that really need to be examined closely, and time needs to be taken, and possibly new models created or software purchase that does it. There is software that does, especially the personnel pieces. So unfortunately, as I was getting ready for this final true-up, I realized that some of the personnel budgets seemed way off. And so in digging in, we did find that there were some formulas that were just wrong in the calculations. And so I've brought them forward here so that we can true those up before year end. A debt service payment that's off by $370. I can't tell you why. Those are usually very straightforward, but debt service is its own category. So if we don't fix it, it becomes an audit issue that they have to report. So I'm bringing it forward so that we can true everything up so that we don't get anything written up on the audit for these issues. And then the third type is a methodology type of adjustment. That you will see again next year, at least next year, if not one more year after that. And that is because we are trying to get to best practices on the methodology for overhead allocation, for fleet costs and things like that. And I'm working with the auditors to do that. We don't have full buy-in yet. I think that the method that I'm proposing is going to be just fine with the auditors, but we don't have full buy-in yet, so there may still be some tweaking, which you would then see middle of next year as we move forward in this process. That change is fairly large when you look at the overall resolution, because we're changing from handling adjustments by transfers, which is one category, and it shows as revenue to the general fund for fleet, to an expenditure reimbursement. So we're shifting from one section of the budget to a whole different section. So that's a pretty big change. So this adjustment looks a lot bigger than I like to see, but the net effect is zero, bottom line. So are there any questions regarding the budget transfer that's being proposed?
Council, any questions for staff? Okay, thank you, Katie. Does anyone have any comments, motions?
I was going to say this will be your biggest year of cleanup, your first year,
It
right?
better be.
I move that we approve Resolution 2017-049.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Resolution 2017-050, adopting the capital improvement project plan for fiscal year 2017-2018. Katie Henry.
So this one's much quicker. There's no changes from what was presented for the Budget Committee. The capital improvement plan itself is a very large document, hence your huge binders that you have for your packets. We won't go into detail here. The piece that impacts the current year is the one-year CIP, which is reviewed in the budget. Those expenses are captured within the capital within the capital funds, excuse me. The rest of it is a plan. We need to have these items in the CIP in order to use the capital funds that are dedicated for them, and that's why this is in here. Our financial policies require that we adopt a 5-year plan each year. So we're bringing it forward to you for adoption, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Council, are there any questions for staff? Hearing no questions, I'll bring it back to council. Council, do you have any comments or a motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 2017-050.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Jennifer. Sorry, I forgot to take a little beat. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, council. Next, we've got our public hearing. Sylvia?
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on 4 items on the agenda. Resolution 2015-051, adopting a schedule of fees as authorized by the City Zoning and Community Development Code, establishing fees for miscellaneous city services and establishing an effective date. Resolution 2017-052, declaring the City of Sherwood's election to receive state revenues. Resolution 2017-053, adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget. And Resolution 2017-054, authorizing the city manager to sell or transfer real property located at 22895 Southwest Elbert Road to the Sherwood School District. The purpose of the hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said items. The order of business the council will follow in conducting this hearing will be to hear a staff report, receive correspondence, receive public testimony, and then additional staff comments. Questions from the council will follow. This hearing will then be closed and no further testimony will be received. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out a testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak. Any questions should be addressed to the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and limit your testimony to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Sylvia. So Resolution 2017-051, adopting a schedule of fees as authorized by the City's Zoning and Community Development Code, establishing fees for miscellaneous city services and establishing an effective date. Katie Hendry.
Okay, this is the fee schedule, and this year we have quite a few more changes than you've seen in the past. And so I felt that it was important that we at least lay out what those different changes are. In your packets, you do have sort of the equivalent of a red line version. We tried to make it a little cleaner with the different categories of changes so that you could see the previous fees and then the new fees and could easily identify what the changes were. So the first category we reviewed not too long ago in Resolution 2017-008, which was certain fees that we could apply basically an inflationary increase to. This year that comes to 1.6%, and so there's a whole category of fees that was applied to. You are not technically approving those since you already approved them to be automatically increased with the resolution, but we've incorporated them here so that all of our fees are in one place for the upcoming year. We also have utility fees that we needed to be higher than the 1.6%, but that are capped at the 2%, and so those are at 2% in order to maintain adequate revenues in order to finance the jobs of the utilities based on the most recent fee studies. Then there's a third category, which is building fees, which has a 15% increase, and then we'll go into that in a little more detail later as to why that is and where that puts the city compared to other cities. And then a few other small things, for example, a new fee here or there, or a difference in a way that we calculate the fees. So what I wanted to do is just break, if someone's looking at the fee schedule, just a quick recap of what can you find in these areas. So in sections 1 through 5, you'll see no increases in your general fees, a few small adjustments in library fines and fees. Police, either no adjustments or some small CPI, the inflationary increase. In court, there have been no increases. A few changes in community services. One, we did have a few new fees. For example, if we close a street for a special event or for a festival, we didn't have a fee for that activity, and it takes actually quite a bit of time for coordinating on the city's part. So we did add a fee for that. And then, of course, we're opening or taking back over the senior center, the Marjorie Stewart Center. So there's a whole section with new fees on that. And then in the Arts Center, the fun carnival games that we've seen at the gala and things like that. So there's a new fee for those. Section 6 is the utility charges for services. That is the section that is subject almost entirely to the 2% maximum. However, you'll notice they're not all at 2%. So you'll see that water and sanitary do have the 2% increase because we need at least that much when we look at the 5 and 10-year plans. For other water charges, so these are not rates, but things like a hydrant permit or things that are related to water, but they're not the rates for the water usage. Those are just subject to inflation, so the 1.6%. Storm rates, when we did the fee study, we saw that there was adequate funding to actually lower the rates a little bit. And we wanted to offset a little bit for the customers since the CWS has passed on some of the franchise fees, things like that. We felt we could at least lower one of the rates, and the fee study supported lowering, or not lowering, but not applying the 2% to storm. So we left that at 1%. And then street fees are subject to the inflationary increase. Section 7 and 8, we have the SDCs. We went over that in quite a bit of detail this last winter. That was updated at that time, so there are no changes here and no changes to engineering charges. Sections 9 and 10 are where you'll see the largest percentage increases. And that's in building. Planning is just the inflationary increase. But building, the last time we had an increase in building fees was back in 2008. And the building department is required by state law to be accounted for separately, and it cannot subsidize the general fund. A lot of places have elected to make it its own fund so that you don't have to track on some spreadsheet and make sure that it's self-sufficient and all of that. As of the end of last year, we were $300,000 in the hole. So we can't create a fund that would start with a negative $300,000 fund balance. We need to get the building department all the way to being whole, plus to have some fund balance for operating before we can split it apart and create its own fund. So we need to have some fund balance in the good years when development is high to support those lower years when we might have to draw on fund balance. And this increase does leave Sherwood well within the neighboring jurisdictions. And if you look at this graph, this has the neighboring jurisdictions, and Sherwood, the blue part of the Sherwood line is where it is currently, and the very top of the gray is where the 15% increase would put them. Now this is for a $400,000 house, for example. We just chose one value, and Julia can give you more information if you have questions further on as to this increase. Then there's Appendix A. The main changes in here are for CWS. They set their rates for the CWS portion. The city now is responsible for setting the rates for the city portion. And they have requested that we show the franchise fee separate and that it is passed on to the customer. So that shows as a new fee in that Appendix A section. So with that, if you have any questions for myself or for Julia or for Josh.
Council, any questions for staff? Okay.
I was going to say on the building permit fees, it's been since 2008. Is there a new plan to look at that more often, or as far as when that's adjusted?
Yeah, I think what happened was that it hadn't been looked at. Our fees were actually reasonable, and we also had very high SDCs at the time compared to what our other jurisdictions were doing. And so I think that they didn't feel like they really could look at them for a little while, and then the economic downturn happened, and they felt like we really can't be raising fees during the economic downturn. And then we had the economic upturn, and we actually, for year after year, we're actually bringing in more than we projected in the building department. And I don't think we quite realized we still weren't recovering our costs. We were just paying back what, or working towards paying back what we were in the hole for. Right. And so, yeah, absolutely what we intend to do is look at this
especially with the
annually.
Brookbend going on.
Yeah, we really, as we're looking at it more with the goal of making sure building is self-sufficient and getting its own separate accounting fund, we do need to be looking at this annually to make sure that we're adequately covering our costs and staying consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing as well.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions for
I
staff?
just had a question.
Yes.
On the new street closure fees, it has a resident and non-resident rate, and I was just wondering if it was one of our local businesses that was requesting it, but the business owner didn't live in the city, are they going to have to pay the non-resident, or do they get some benefit of being a business in our city?
I'm going to have Kristen Schweitzer come up because she
Sorry,
worked
Kristen.
with Craig to put this together, so.
On special event permits, it's by the organization that fills out the paperwork. So whether you're a 501c3 locally or a business that's filling it out, it would be based on that.
So that would be considered a resident then if they're a business in the city?
Correct.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions for staff, council? Okay, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing, public comment time, and I've got one, Eugene Stewart.
Probably too late to do anything now, but it seems like the city needs to look at commercial building fees. And the reason I say that is that I am aware that when Costco was looking to build a facility in Sherwood, they basically, I've heard, told the city their fees were too high. And so they walked away from it. Well, that's just what I heard. So I think we need to look at that because the commercial side certainly has been, my understanding, puts more money into the coffers than residential does of that. And in fact, it helps pay for some of the residential that we have. And I think some of these fees, we need to take another look at them. Other question I've got is that the franchise fees, you charge the citizens to use city property to put the utilities down and use them. So why are you charging them again? Other than the fact maybe you can. Somehow it seems like we need to wean ourselves away from that. The other thing is on watering fees. It would be nice, especially if we have surplus water sitting in the ground there, having summer watering rates, and also look at watering costs for seniors. They're on a fixed budget, and even 2% is a big chunk for them. And the other question I have on that franchise fee is that I know this downtown addition, the streets and alleys were dedicated for public use. City does not, quote, own them. So how do you charge me a franchise fee on property where the property's already been dedicated for public use? I don't understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional? Okay, I'll close the public comment time and bring it back to staff. Staff, did you have any?
I have no further.
Okay. So I'll bring it back to council. I had a question on something that Gene brought up. He was talking about the streets being a public purpose, public use, but the streets are used for cars. So what you're charging for is if they shut the street and the cars cannot use it, correct? Is that right? What the fee is for? For a special event?
Yes. So for a special event, what we're charging for is the staff time that's required to close those streets. So we're not charging for the use of the streets. We're charging for the police officer that has to be there, for the public works people who have to come and close the streets, for the admin who has to file the paperwork. I mean, those are the charges. We're not paying for the street.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I just wanted some clarification in that because that kind of threw me a little bit, and I thought I think a little clarification might help. All right. Thank you. Council, did you have any other questions?
I have a follow-up question for you, Katie. In the street fees that are new, does that incorporate the overtime charges that the police typically are required to pay to their employees?
I have not seen the detailed fee study on this. And one of the things that I hope that we will begin tracking more is the overtime for specific projects. We just got the account set up to track that for this current payroll. So that's how close we are. We don't have the data yet in order to be able to say if the fees are adequate, but at least putting them in place gives us something that we can work on as we go forward once we are able to do the full study, unless Joe has some additional information.
Councilor Robinson, the new fee for street closure for a festival or something really is more for the cost for public works to close the street, to put the barricades up and things like that. It does not really take into account any kind of police or other services. And we looked at other cities to see what their street closure permits, because we don't want to make it too high that it would then become a problem for festivals, that it would become too expensive and cost prohibitive.
Right.
That's why you see two kind of fees. If you close one street versus closing many streets in Old Town, we wanted to kind of be equitable in that regard. It does not fully recover costs. If we tried to fully recover our costs, the fee would be probably cost prohibitive to many of the organizations that want to close city streets and use them. It's just we had no charge, no ability in the past.
We're sharing the cost.
We're sharing the cost. It's not a full cost recovery.
And it's predominantly then what you're saying is not overtime paid
Not
to
for
police, it's
overtime.
for regular public works doing the work. Okay. Okay.
And as Mr. Pessmer has reminded me over the years, we invested millions of dollars in URA funds in infrastructure in our Old Town streets to have exactly what's going on for them to be used for festivals and activities. And that's what we're seeing. And that creates some tension, of course, but I think it's because we've had success in Old Town. And this is just, like I said, a new fee that we couldn't charge in the past. And people would question, you're giving a public resource to, in some case, a private organization that's running the festival. That doesn't seem right. They should be paying for that right. So that's really the genesis for this. But it's a balancing act. We never tried to fully capture all those costs, because it would probably be in the thousands of dollars, quite honestly.
So it's not necessarily so much of you're not penalizing, you are just making it a little bit more equitable.
Yeah, and I think, as Councilor Young said, it's a little bit more cost sharing. And we'll find out over the next year whether we get any pushback from folks, whether it is cost prohibitive. We don't believe there will be, but we'll find out.
That we love our festivals.
Yes, we do.
And they're very big community builders, but they're not free. And so
Correct.
I think that they're, as our budget becomes, less and less flexible with PERS, we have to make adjustments, and everybody share in the responsibility of providing goods and services to our citizens. Yeah. Okay, great.
And we talk about this in the budget process for our two major festivals, Robin Hood during the summer, and then Cruisin', which just wrapped up. We do have good costs in terms of the in-kind contributions, and it's easily in the $5,000 to $10,000 a year for each of those events that the city's contributing in kind. It's significant.
Right. Yeah, and that is significant. Okay. All right. Thank you, Joe. Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you. I'll bring it back to council. Do I have a motion or any discussion?
I move that we approve Resolution 2017-051.
Second. Do I need a roll call, Sylvia, or can I just call it? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, council. Resolution 2017-052, declaring the city of Sherwood's election to receive state revenues. Katie Henry?
So the purpose of this hearing is to provide citizens with the opportunity to provide feedback on the proposed use of the distributions of state shared revenue in relation to the entire budget of the city for the fiscal year. That's pretty much the verbiage of the ORS and the reason for this hearing. So to start out, I wanted to give our citizens and remind council what are these revenues. So this is an excerpt from what is provided to us each year by the League of Oregon Cities. This isn't the exact amounts that we'll get, but just to give you an idea of how we come up with these budget projections and how we determine what we'll be getting. They look at what do we think we'll be getting from liquor revenues and cigarette taxes and highway funds. The city doesn't get the 911 taxes. Those go elsewhere. But the other ones apply to us, and they're applied based on population. And that population is determined by Portland State University. That's a specific number. 19,145 is the number for Sherwood. And that number is used to calculate how much we get. And each quarter, we get these revenues from the state. And then there's also another portion of liquor revenues that's distributed based on a formula rather than based on population. One thing I wanted to point out is that although the liquor revenues are going up, as you can see, the highway fund revenues are actually going down as people become more conscious of fuel use, and we have more electric cars, and we have more trip sharing and things like that happen. We are starting to see those revenues go down, and that impacts our street fund. So it's something we do need to be aware of moving forward. That funding is not one that's going to increase every year like most of the other ones do. So what does this look like compared to the rest of our budget? So we're looking at, it's housed within the intergovernmental revenues. So for the general fund, that's about 1.9 million or 15%. But that's not made up of just the state shared revenues. So if we take that piece of the pie and we cut it down even further, the yellow pieces on your pie there are the pieces that are state shared revenue. So cigarette tax makes up about, I want to say that there's some zeros. Oh, no, that's right. 23,000. The state revenue sharing about 220,000, and then the liquor tax is the largest portion for the general fund at 330,000. There was a question previously on marijuana tax. We don't get any of that here within the city because we don't have any recreational marijuana locations. If there were some, then that's distributed based on a formula as well. I know that's potentially going on the ballot, so that would possibly be something in the future. For street operations, intergovernmental makes up 65%, so much more for the streets. And if you break that down, the entire amount is actually state shared revenue. So we get vehicle taxes and then gas taxes. So those make up almost all of our budget for street operations. This does all of the maintenance. It does all of our, they're large projects, but ones that don't qualify for use of the capital funds. So where you're just replacing portions of your streets, or you're doing the, I don't know all the words, slurry seal or something like that. All of those things that happen in the streets. This is what funds those. And so if we look at the overall uses, so the purpose of this hearing is what should we use it for? Some places prefer to have designated uses, and we track it separately, and we're going to use these funds specifically for this purpose. It's not required at all, and as of now, the city has chosen to combine them with other funds. So the highway pieces, the street pieces are in the street fund and only used for streets. And then the general fund gets the liquor tax and the cigarette tax. And those are used, they're pooled with everything else. And so they're used to support public safety, administration, community services, our facilities, community development. So they're put in that general fund pool rather than being assigned out for specific purposes. So I just wanted, that's all I have is just a brief overview of state shared revenues and what we currently use them for. Any questions?
Council, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, I'll bring it back. Do we have any public comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Jean Stewart, you did. You wrote multiple numbers on there, so I will. 9B. Very good. Thank you.
Again, too late now, but I would hope that in the future on these state shared revenues, it's kind of my understanding that the people are supposed to help you determine where that goes, and you have very poor input from the citizens when you do this part. You need to improve it, be a little bit more transparent on these funds. Where some of it go probably makes good sense. They probably say spend it there. But there again, if under, I know some of the state shared revenues, you're supposed to, ask for the citizens' involvement, and you just don't get it. People don't come out. I seem to be the only one that says anything. So is that because you don't publicize it enough? Maybe you need to have a committee to look at this. ahead of time before the budget committee comes up. You got a whole year to be planning for this. And yes, it takes a little more effort, but I think if the people do show they want to get involved on this, let them get involved. And maybe they'll come up with some ideas that you don't see that they do every day. Whether it's a chuck hole someplace that nobody seems to know it's there. You know, where some of the money should be spent on what, I don't know. But it just seems like get the citizens involved. And I'm sure you would find some things that you're not budgeting for, and maybe there's a better way to do it. But like I say, on shared revenue, it's to me that the legislature intended. That's why I know it's very simple to do it the way you're doing. And maybe that just barely meets the law, but it's just like federal shared funds. They wanted public, they put the money out there for the public to figure out how to spend it, much as like we spent up on the senior center when the library was built, public shared funds. So if the state, I think we should do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Can I say something? Yeah, I'll bring it back to council.
Just on that note, there's 3 budget positions open, so get your applications in.
Outside the city, I own property and I'm not allowed to be on the budget.
Anyone.
That was just a general
anyone.
statement to the public. Apply, apply, apply. Serve, serve, serve. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, I will bring it back to council. Thank you. I'll close the public comment time. Bring it back to council. Do you have any additional, and to staff, did you have any additional
I have nothing
information?
additional on this.
Okay. And I'll bring it to council. Council, do you have any additional questions, comments, or do I have a motion?
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 2017-052, declaring the City of Sherwood's election to receive state revenues.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Mayor, who was the second on that?
Dan. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Resolution 2017-053, adopting the fiscal year 2017-18 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget. Katie Henry.
Okay, this is the last of our budget and money-related topics here this evening. For this public hearing, I wanted to make sure, since the goal of this hearing is to allow the citizens one last chance to put a word in as far as the budget goes, and we didn't have a whole lot of citizen involvement in the budget committee meetings. This is just a really brief recap of what the budget has within it so that citizens know what we're talking about. So if we look at our revenues,
But just to clarify, we did have public comment at each budget committee meeting.
Opportunity
so
for it,
I just
and-
want to make sure the opportunity was there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So if we look at citywide, the largest amount of revenues come from utility fees. Just a reminder that those fees are kept within the utility funds. They cannot be used for general administration of the city. We then have property taxes, the largest portion for the general fund, and then several other items such as fines and forfeitures, state shared revenues that we just talked about, franchise fees, and those all stay pretty much at the same level for revenues. For expenditures, the largest by far category is personal services. That's the people. Governments are service organizations. People are where the cost is. You do see that increase for the 17-18 budget, and a large portion of that is PERS, as was mentioned earlier. Some of it, of course, is cost of living. Some of it is step increases. That's a normal part of having employees, but those PERS costs are significantly higher than what we would normally see. We then also have materials and services, which is the next piece. A lot of that does come from our utilities, which a lot of it is paid out. So we have less in the specific funds. So here, I wanted to look at, to show you for by fund what personal services look like. And you can see, obviously, the huge majority of it is in the general fund. And you can see that increase, it's starting to go up faster than we'd like. Again, mostly from PERS. We're not having huge increases in FTEs. We're not hiring a bunch of people. It's just normal course of business having those increases. You see that the utilities, they're just staying pretty darn stagnant. Not a whole lot happening in personnel. Materials and services. One thing you will notice is that in the general fund, you don't have the increase that you should, in my opinion, have based on inflation. And the reason is that in the general fund, we had to cut back on materials and services to make up for that increase in the personal services. We always present a balanced budget. Money coming in that year needs to equal money going out, and property taxes don't go up as fast as costs do. But that means in the general fund that there were cuts made, and a lot of cuts were made in maintenance. So deferred maintenance, that's one of the big reasons that that is almost stagnant. Travel and training is another area where we had those cuts to try to keep those costs down so that we could stay within revenues. In water, you have large increases, water, street, and sanitary. The reason for that is that the capital portions of those funds, we have lots of projects going on. Those funds have separate funding sources. We have infrastructure that's going to be improved. We have normal repairs that have to happen, manholes that need T's instead of Y's or something. Anyway, there's stuff happening out there under our streets and in our sewers. And then we also have the other piece of the budget, which is the use of fund balance, one-time expenses. This is if we have fund balance that's over and above the 20%, we can use it for one-time expenses. We just have 3 that are included in the budget. We have a senior planner position dedicated to the comp plan update, a NeoGov, which is software for hiring and handling a lot of our human resources, and then the turf at Snyder Baseball Field is the largest. That's the one piece of deferred maintenance that we just felt was too risky and too important for our youth and for our community to continue to defer that. So that was included. So that's just the quick basic recap of the budget that we're presenting tonight, and this hearing is to see if there's any public comment on that.
And as Katie has mentioned, the purpose, because everyone here has attended all of the budget committee meetings and or listened if they missed it, walked through it with the budget committee members, and so this is a abbreviated version. We did tape all of the budget committee meetings, and so anyone who wanted to watch those certainly could and see what transpired in the discussions therein. So this is just an abbreviated. I don't want people thinking, oh, this is how they prove it. Well, there we go. Yeah, we're done. Okay. So it is a long and arduous process. In fact, we took an extra day this year to really get into the weeds and have a thorough discussion, and it turned out great. So I want to make sure that that's very public and everyone is aware. All of that information is online at your fingertips if you'd like to see it. So I will, did anyone have any questions for Katie on council? Okay, so no questions. I'll open up the public hearing. Jean Stewart.
I read an article where one person made the comment that in 4 years, with the PERS increases, a lot of municipalities are going to have to look at a 10% layoff of employees. I think the council needs to sit down and take a hard look at this, and before you're faced with the same problem. Because citizens can't afford to keep paying that. State legislature keeps kicking the can down the road. I don't know, you're several million behind, and that costs you in that you got to make up the lost revenue for that. So there again, PERS keeps going up. I thought at one time we had, years back, had opted in and caught up to where we were even, and now we're in the hole again. Most businesses fail doing this. And you need to, like I say, take it very seriously and look at it and come up with a solution to the problem. On deferred maintenance, I would think any buildings that need new roofs, you should seriously take a look at funding those by installing solar heating or solar power for those buildings with storage system to hold it. I believe if you looked at it, you would probably find out that the energy savings would pay the bonds to do it. And if you can start saving and pay for it, why not do it? Why are we deferring it? I think that you should identify all the buildings where this would work, and if you can, maybe do a supplemental budget later, but get it done. Start using the savings. Why are we wasting all this energy that the sun gives us to us free? It makes no sense that why we can't plan for these things. And because I know there was one school district back in Tennessee when they did a massive remodeling. It was a Sherwood, Tennessee school district, which I just happened to was Googling Sherwood School District or something that took me back to Tennessee. I think it was Tennessee or Arkansas, excuse me.
Arkansas.
But when they built their new schools, they provided light through the ceilings. They converted to solar energy, and they paid for it with the savings in energy. They paid the bonds. The citizens didn't pay 1 penny for the conversion. So I think we need to look at that. Thank you. And thank you for funding the senior center.
Thank you, Jean. Do we have any additional public comment? All right, I'll close the public comment time, bring it back to staff if you have any.
Yes, just one other thing. There is another item in this resolution, which is that we are imposing a tax levy. So I just want to make sure to point out that you know that you are approving that. We are proposing the full amount of the tax levy. There is, of course, the option that we have to lower it. Given our current financial situation, we do not recommend that. And then we're also imposing the debt service levy, which has gone down significantly this year since we paid off a very large portion of our debt. So this year we're at $285,338 for the debt service levy. The citizens will not see a significant change on their taxes because the school bond levy was almost exactly the same amount. And so when people see that, but I thought our taxes were going down, they were, and that other levy has come in and it's for about the same amount. So there won't be a significant change for individual property owners, but the city is imposing less taxes for that.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll bring it back. Did any other staff have comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Council have any?
Oh, I just had one comment. This is my first budget committee as a member of city council, and I just wanted to give big kudos to Katie and Joe for putting this all together, and it was a great experience, and the information that was given and the way that it was delivered was fantastic. So I just wanted to publicly recognize you guys for doing a great job.
Well, and I liked the way that we did it very judiciously. We did it nice and slowly. No one was rushed. We talked things through. Katie, you were always ready with answers. As was Joe. In fact, I don't remember you ever saying, I'll get back to you. I think you had, if it was ever, I'll get back to you, it's, give me 1 second. And then she was out. And then she's back. And it was
I should also say our new chair on the budget committee, Mirta Meyer, did a great job stepping in, getting nominated as the chair unknowingly first day, and she jumped right in and handled the meetings like a champ. So
she did, and it can be a little daunting because on the first day of the budget committee meeting, you elect the budget chair, and if you're new to budget, you don't necessarily know that. If you're kind of seasoned, you do. But she did not expect her nomination, and just absolute rounding support, and she took it like a big champ. She really did. And then afterwards, she was like, "Really? What? What? It's really hard to be the chair."
She did great.
She did great. She did awesome. Okay, so thank you for saying that, Councilor Garland. Do we have any? Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify something with Katie on what Mr. Stewart said about our PERS being in the hole again. I am assuming he's talking about the PERS liability that's on our book, and that's not really a debt that we owe, right?
That's not a debt that we owe. We're required to report it on the government-wide statements. It is a liability. That number fluctuates significantly. The city doesn't have a lot of control over that. It's at the state level, and then it's allocated out everywhere, and then the state determines what the amounts are that the city pays in. The amount of that liability is truly a number that we will never have to pay out that number. It's paid over time, and it's an actuarial estimate. Is there an issue with PERS? Absolutely. Is it the amount of the liability? I would say absolutely not.
And every public entity gets assigned their own liability number.
Every public entity that's participating in PERS, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
But it is something that you have to always keep in mind.
You have to keep it in mind, and you have to report it, but you cannot, I would say that it's not possible to fully fund that liability like you might other liabilities.
Okay. Good clarification. Yes.
Madam Mayor. I wanted to also express gratitude to Katie for being able to answer questions like that. And you had charts and graphs. You were so prepared, and it was just such a pleasant surprise to have someone so gifted on our team who was able to answer all the questions. So I thank you for that a lot. And also, while originally I might have had a motion before the Budget Committee and or tonight to expand on utilizing a one-time expense out of our reserves, I don't think that's appropriate in lieu of the PERS increase and the fact that we've but we've deferred maintenance. It's really key to our community. And I think had the budget been a little healthier for revenues, I certainly would have made that motion because I really I feel very strongly about moving forward with a comprehensive plan update. And so that's why I did not make a motion. I will not make a motion tonight, but I expect that once we receive some significant revenues from sales of property, I definitely would like to see a comp plan update, supplemental budget coming in relatively soon, hopefully.
At the top of the list.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 2017-053.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Resolution 2017-054, authorizing the city manager to sell or transfer real property located at 22895 Southwest Elwert Road to the Sherwood School District. Joe?
Mayor and Council, I will introduce this topic. Josh may have some additional commentary about the state requirements, why we need to hold a public hearing before we sell property. I won't go through all the details of the staff report, but I'll hit on the key points and then respond to any questions that you may have. So I think we all know that the school district had a very successful bond levy that passed last November. It passed with 54% in support of the levy. It is a very comprehensive levy, but the major component and the major piece of a very complicated puzzle with our friends at the school district is construction of a new high school. Because once that new high school is built, a lot of shifting can happen where as you guys probably remember, the two middle schools will then go and be relocated to the current high school, and then two elementary schools will move into what are the current middle schools. None of that can happen, quite honestly, until the new high school is done. So after the school district was successful with the bond, they immediately actually turned around and talked to us about some property along Elwert Road near Hade and Kruger. They had done some extensive research at sites, mainly in the Sherwood West concept area that we were studying. They looked at, I believe, 4 or 5 other sites and landed on this site as the primary location for the new high school. I think they started out not looking at the property that the city owns. They were looking at approximately 50 acres adjacent to our property, but that parcel, those parcels have a significant gas line, major gas line that goes through it, and they cannot build not only on top of that, but also adjacent to it. So I think they started looking at adjacent properties, and we own 19.9 acres directly adjacent. So we started talking almost immediately back in December, and they expressed interest to the city to purchase some of that property. You may recall that property was bought in 2011, primarily for a transportation improvement project that the county has scheduled, which is a roundabout at Elwert that is on the horizon anyway. So we bought that land back in 2011. Tom Pessimir's here tonight on his vacation and can answer any questions about the purchase of that property, but we knew that the county would not need all of that property for the transportation improvements, and that we would have a significant piece of land to work with ourselves, either as the city, to do projects that we may feel were of public purpose, or to sell that land someday. That land is not currently within the UGB or the urban growth boundary. It is directly outside the urban growth boundary. So we need about 5 acres of that 19 acres or 19.9 acres for the county to do their transportation improvements, and the school district expressed interest in all 15 acres approximately to be added to the other parcels that they are currently negotiating with. We started a negotiation process back in December. The city went out and had 2 appraisals done. Both of those appraisals are in your packet. The first one, the most important one, is what is the value of that property today, because it is currently not in the urban growth boundary. But we also asked the appraiser to do a hypothetical appraisal, because when land comes into the urban growth boundary, it goes up significantly in value. So our appraisal for that property was approximately $100,000 an acre. But the appraisal for the hypothetical jumps to close to $500,000 an acre. And I think the council wanted to know, if we sell this land now versus hanging on to it for 5 or 10 years when it comes into the UGB, what are we essentially giving up in terms of the potential value of this land? That was an important question that you asked, which is why we did both appraisals. So those appraisals are in the packet. State law requires that we fully disclose those appraisals to the public, and that's why they're in the packet for tonight. Our negotiations back and forth with the school district, we landed on a price of $130,000 an acre for the approximately 15 acres that they are interested in purchasing. My understanding from working with our partners at the school district, we're the first property owner to come to terms. They are negotiating with 3 other property owners adjacent to our piece. Those are still ongoing negotiations, and I believe they've also started the condemnation process for those properties. So that's kind of how we got here very quickly. Josh, I don't know if you have any additional comments about the legal requirements.
Not really, other than that you're required to disclose the information that is in your packet and to hold a public hearing. So that's why we're going through this process to do this.
This is one piece. Julia meets weekly with the folks from the team over at the school district on this project. We are joined at the hip to try to meet the very aggressive schedule. The school district wants to start moving dirt next June, and they want this high school open in 2020, which is right around the corner. And this is only one piece of a very complicated piece of a puzzle to get done. So it's an important piece to get the property acquired. So, Councilor Robinson, you look like you
Yes.
have a question.
I wanted to make sure that we met the requirement for publication of the meeting notice.
We did, thanks to some hard work on behalf of Katie Henry and her staff. They were able to use a contact they had at the Tiger Times to get the newspaper notice in well beyond their deadline.
Great.
So we did meet
Yeah,
that
I
requirement.
want to applaud Jean, basically, in Katie's office. I was on the phone with Superintendent Cordy explaining that it probably would have to be July 11th for this public hearing to take place because we couldn't meet the deadline for the public notice. And lo and behold, Jean was on the phone with the Times and trying to get it in the paper. And there was a request at their end to actually ask the publisher to kind of hold the presses and see if we could squeeze this in so we could do this tonight. And they did that, which was very appreciated, I think, on all parties, that we can get this hopefully done tonight and not wait till July 11th to take action on this. As you can probably realize, the school district is very anxious to keep this project moving forward because they have a commitment to get this project done in 3 years. So can't really do anything else until they can have a building where the high school students can move into. So timing is of the essence.
So I have a couple questions. Should we choose to sell this land at this time? Can the school district begin to do their building?
Well, they have lots of other things that have to happen before they can start construction. So my understanding is it first has to come into the UGB, the urban growth boundary. That process is ongoing. There has been at least one hearing that has been continued, but Julia, do you know when that is going to be?
They've had the second hearing, and they left the record open, but they closed the hearing. I don't know what the deadline is for everybody to submit additional information. It was, I'd say within the next month, the hearings officer will have all the information and hopefully make a decision. And he basically makes a recommendation to the Metro Council, and then there's a Metro Council hearing. So the Metro Council isn't expected to actually hold a hearing and make a decision until late July, early August.
So that's one piece of the puzzle, is having this land and the adjacent land where they want to build the high school to come into the UGB. They will be back in front of us in the fall, I believe, for annexation to bring the property into the city of Sherwood. They have to have access, or basically all of the properties have to be within their control. I believe basically the only issue with the condemnation is price with the other parties. I think they've filed the necessary paperwork, and because they haven't been able to come to terms, and I think they're still negotiating, if they can't come to terms, then the court will decide what the value is for those other parcels. And that's really the only outstanding issue, a big outstanding issue for them. So and then working with us to basically get into design and development of go through the land use process. So it'll have to go to Planning Commission and go through the whole process for the high school construction, and then ultimately building permits. So to move dirt next June is very aggressive, but doable if everything lines up as they've kind of projected out. And that's why we meet with them weekly to kind of, where are we, how are things going, what's working, what's not working. So
get all the permits right. And,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my question, though, is, does selling this property move the ball forward for them if they still have the rest of the properties that have to go through condemnation?
Yes, I would, in my opinion, you'd probably get different opinions from folks, but I think it moves the ball forward.
And how does it move it forward then?
Because one of the parcels is now, proceeding. We've got an agreed sales price. The process can move forward in terms of the legal documents. Their attorney and our attorney can prepare everything to do the acquisition and get that done in the next few months. And that's one of 4 properties that they can kind of click off the list. I don't know specifically how things are going with the others, except I do know that they've started condemnation, which means they haven't come to terms yet.
Right.
But they will come to terms because the court ultimately will decide what the value of those properties are.
Right. And so, and the court will make a ruling on what the value of the
Correct.
property is at the end of the day.
That's my understanding as well.
And they'll need to have all of the properties together before they can move dirt, as you said. Is that correct?
It's a complicated question that you're asking. In short. We're debating it over here. Debating on the sidelines over here. I guess there are different schools of thought, as Joe said, on some of these questions that you're asking. For example, I would say that the school district probably believes that finalizing this sale will help them move forward the condemnation process.
In other words, it gives them leverage in this process.
That'll be their position.
That's a precedent.
That'll be their position, right? Other people may disagree. I'm sure the other party in the condemnation will disagree, but that would be their position. The other question that Julia and I were discussing that's a little bit unresolved is how far along they have to be in the condemnation process before they can qualify for the annexation process.
Got it.
So that is to be determined.
Okay.
But it may be the case that they would have to have ownership of all of the properties as opposed to just some before they can move forward with that.
And just to clarify, from a land use standpoint, it's my understanding that there's precedent that says if you've started the condemnation process, which essentially you're in that process, it's just a question of how much, not if, that they can submit land use applications on behalf of whoever's doing the condemning. But the question is whether or not that same precedent exists for annexation, and specifically the new Senate Bill 1573 annexation that says you have to have 100% of all property owners. And that's the question that we're still wrestling with.
Okay.
Yeah, because the annexation, we believe, would be under the new rules that Brookman came in. And if the condemnation isn't finalized, who signs? Right. Who gets to sign the application? Is it the school district because they're far enough in the process, or is it the current property owners? And that's uncharted territory because this is a brand new state law. So.
Well, and I appreciate because it is a little bit of a difficult situation because I think everyone seated here is very excited about supporting and being supportive of the school board and getting this going, and the school district and having a new high school and building a new high school. And we are although we purchased this property to work through the traffic issues and the road issues there, it was definitely purchased as an investment. You don't purchase land and then expect to not make some kind of a increase in your investment. And so when I look at this and I see, okay, so because there was a little bit of a question as to what's the value, and it was a little amoebious because we've got two appraisers and one says 100,000 an acre, and then the other one is in the UGB 500,000 an acre. Okay, that's a big gap. And so I can totally see why there is this hesitation and allowing, okay, let's let the courts decide this. And of course, I am more than happy to sell it for whatever it's worth, but I'm a little iffy on actual value. What's the value of the land? I think that everyone is. Well, what is the value of this land? We want to be great partners. We're willing to sell. Let's sell this property, but I've got to be fiscally responsible when I'm talking about my citizens' tax dollars and investments that we've made. And so, what's the best course here? And I'm having trouble seeing the advantage to either the school district or the city in jumping the gun and saying, well, we think maybe it's worth $130,000. We think. Instead of allowing the courts to decide for everyone, this is what the acreage is worth. Okay, that's what we'll sell it for. What if it's worth 110? What if it's worth 100? What if it's worth 300? It doesn't really matter. That's the value. And having lots of years of experience in litigation, you go in and say, all right, court, what's the value? Okay, that's the value. So I don't necessarily think that. I think it's a perceived advantage. I don't think it's a real advantage. If it was a real advantage, I'd be all for it. If it was a real advantage of negotiation tactic for the school district, I'd be saying absolutely. Let's load this thing up. Let's get it down. But having all these years of experience in negotiation and litigation, I think the other property owners are digging their heels in and they're saying, "Nuh-uh, we're not selling. I don't care what you sell it to the city for. Doesn't matter. We don't care. We're going through condemnation." And I'm not hearing from my staff that there's an advantage. Am I hearing wrong?
Well, I would like to hear from some other counselors because that is part of the negotiation.
Well, I want to hear from staff first because I'm not hearing from staff that there is an advantage. So what I'm wanting to know is where's my advantage? Because if I can hang my hat on advantage, then I'm going to feel good about it. But if I can't, then I'm just going to, it's just an opinion.
I'll try to take that one.
Okay, that's great. Perfect.
The advantage, if there is one, and that's to be determined by the court, is when they're trying to determine, the court's trying to determine the value of the property in condemnation, they will look to comparable sales of property. And so the school district will presumably argue that this is a comparable sale of property. Okay. And they will be up to the court to determine whether that's persuasive and whether it really is a comparable sale of property. But it will be a piece of evidence that they will introduce to try to argue that this is the value of these properties.
Okay.
That would be the advantage.
So it's in creating a comparable. Okay. Okay.
What he said.
I wanted the legalese.
The reason this was part of the discussion that we had extensively as a council. I think it's important for the council to talk about the other reasons why we're doing this, or it appears that we're doing this tonight, or at least, we got to this point that we tentatively agreed with school board on this number, but we have to go through the vote, and the public has to understand this. There are other reasons to do that, so.
Councilor Kuiper, I'm going to let Council President speak first, and I'll go to you next. Okay, ma'am?
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We'll get to that.
Yes, we will. I will open it up. I just wanted to get through the staff questions first with counselors, because I was listening to my staff. So, Councilor Hurst, did you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Could you quickly summarize condemnation for those in the TV world and our audience that may not know what that means? Because it sounds like you're condemning a home that is not fit for living for some people.
Yes. So the other term is eminent domain. Not that necessarily adds any clarification to the issue.
Sounds better.
It's got a better connotation.
Yeah.
But essentially what it is typically it's a public entity wants to purchase some property for a public purpose and attempts to negotiate a purchase price with the private property owner, typically a private property owner, and they're not able to come to terms. And so the public entity who's trying to acquire the property, the buyer, will initiate condemnation or eminent domain proceedings in a court, and both sides will present evidence about what they think the property value is, and a court will decide what that value is, and then the sale can proceed at that price.
So they're not deciding if they can do condemnation or eminent domain, just what the cost of the value.
Because as a public entity, they have the authority to issue condemnation proceedings and to exercise that right. Yes.
And the public purpose here is to build a new high school, which is needed in the community, and that's what the community voted for. Perfect. So that's the public purpose that gives them the ability to condemn property, to basically come and take your property and say, we want your property, and we're going to pay you the fair market value.
Right.
And basically, they're still debating that. What is the fair market value?
Okay, Councilor Kuiper, did you have a question, ma'am?
Not necessarily a question, but just some comments.
No, we'll go to comments later after we do our public hearing. We're just taking questions for staff. Do you have any questions for staff?
No, not right.
Okay, I'll get back to you on the council comments. Okay. Any other questions from council? Did you have a question, Councilor Young? No. Okay, you're thinking about it. All right. Any other questions?
No questions.
Okay, no questions. All right. I will then open up the public hearing time. Do we have? Well, this actually wasn't listed on your Gene Stewart. Did you want to add it?
No, I think he added it.
Oh, you did. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see the D. I had it covered up. Yep. Come on up. Come on up.
A few weeks back, the Planning Commission hosted an open house with the citizens on the proposed high school site. There was probably 30, 40 people there. There's like 5 or 6 tables of people, planning commissioners sitting with each table. And of all the people there, I don't believe there's one person that was in favor of the proposed site. Some of them who had served on the West plan were a little disappointed that they didn't, why they chose a site that's going to take quite a bit of site work to make it level, when they had another place on the plan where they proposed, the citizens proposed, the high school or school site should be. Some of the things they looked at was traffic they were concerned with. Like I mentioned before, their traffic engineer said there's only 35,000 cars a day on 99W. You can look at the state records, and they have to yearly send in to the federal government the estimated average on the major roads. And coming through Sherwood, it gets up to 60,000 cars a day, trucks. And different points, it goes down as traffic peels off, trying to get other parts of the community. And one of the things is that nobody has looked at is that I think the site, they're saying 800 parking spaces. Can you imagine what happens when a football game comes? You're going to have 2,000 students in that school, and you're going to have staff and students and 800 parking spaces? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think they need to look at it. I left that meeting, as well as several people that I was around, that that meeting was almost useless. The school district is pushing forward, and I'm sorry, but it appears, and I've heard this, staff from both the school district and the city, they're pushing forward with this plan without, it hasn't even gone before the planning commission yet. So it's like, I think you're better off to sit back and wait, because number one, you need to get the best value you can for that property. I have a client that is in process of selling some 40 acres off of Roy Rogers, and yes, that's inside the urban boundary, but that was 14 million. So you got 20 acres, 10 acres, you should be getting around 10 for it once it comes in. There again, I think I haven't heard anything where the school district is going to come back and answer the problems that were raised at that meeting. I would like to see them come back and present something to the planning commission, and how they are proposing to answer some of these questions. But we seem to have blinders on, and we're just going to go forward no matter what. And hopefully there's enough common sense. Let's slow up and make sure we're making the right decision for everyone. Yes, we need a new school, and it'll be nice. But is that the best spot? From the one meeting I went to, most people didn't think so. In fact, at that meeting, that was the first time that anybody knew there was a hearings officer coming out to hear on that. I mean, there was no publication of the notice. Maybe they put it in the newspaper, but they certainly didn't publicize it in the common places that the city of Sherwood does, which I think they should. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Do we have any additional public? Okay, so I'll close the. You can fill it out after. Okay, yeah. You could just fill it out. Just state your name.
Susan Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. Being on the budget committee and knowing how tight we are with our resource management and our needs, I don't think that we need to be doing a favor for the school district of creating a comparable for them and taking a discount, taking an early price. If there's a difference between 100,000 an acre, not in the UGB, and 500 in the UGB, the city of Sherwood has the capacity and ultimately was going to put it in the UGB anyway. So even if you're splitting the difference, that's $250 an acre, which is a lot more money for our deferred maintenance, for our PERS responsibility. And still, in this environment, is a pretty good comp at that level, because Sherwood prices are crazy. When you can have a 2,100 square foot house built by teenagers on the market for $500,000, that's nuts. Whether they'll get it, we'll see. But my point is, Sherwood is a great place to be because we have systematically made it a great place. And we're not Aloha, we're not Lafayette. We're not a little town or a little unincorporated area that should be taking discounts because we just want the school to be there. The school's going to be there. They've already started exercising eminent domain. It's going to happen. For us not to be in there, and it's not any slight on the school district, and the school district would say the same thing to us. I mean, they are trying to maximize their dollar. It is our responsibility to do the best we can with that, because that money was purchased. I'm so glad Tom's here because he probably knows the answer. I think it was with street fund. So we don't get those proceeds to just jump right into the general fund. They go back to the street fund, and then you guys are going to work out whatever, some profit, whatever you do there. But we don't even, excuse me, I'm getting too close. We don't even have the capacity to use all of that money. It's going to go back into our street fund. We got a great purchase on it initially, but that doesn't mean that we reduce our accumulated value to benefit another party. Even if it is a school district, they have $245 million plus interest. They've got plenty of money. This is less than like 1/100% for just this purchase, and the land is such an insignificant amount of their dollars. I can understand that they want to do the best they can, but we need to do the best for our budget too, and we have a lot of responsibility, and it's our staff that makes this town work. It's their staff that makes the school work, but we're the guys that go out there when something is wrong with the street. We're the guys that go out there when there's a wreck, when there's any kind of an incident at the school. It's our police, it's our public works, it's all of our staff that we have a great responsibility for, and also for our people of this town. We have to have our duties separated. We're not saying, school district, we don't love you. We do love you, but you have money. We need money. We have money. It's our asset. Let's deal with it that way, and don't prematurely give something up that we need the money for in order to maintain the service level that we need as a town. Thanks.
If you could just fill out your form and give it to Sylvia, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Do we have any additional forms? Okay, I'll close the public comment time and bring it back for questions for staff. I had a question that one of our citizens brought up. Susan brought up the bond value. The $245 million is the bond value. What is the school district budget, the annual budget, for their general budget?
So in their current year general fund, which is probably comparing apples to apples just to give a census scope, in the current year it's about a $50 million general fund.
Okay.
And then the city's general fund is approximately 15 million.
15?
15 million.
Okay.
If you wanted to get a census scale.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. So that point actually was one of the sort of the sticking points that I was having, in that I understand that 54% of voters were in favor. That means 46 were against the increased taxation. So they won the bond, and we're paying the bond, and they're going to get $245 million, and they've got a $50 million budget, and the city has a $15 million budget. So for us to give up the opportunity, to be in the mix of being told by the courts what the value of the property is, it seems to me to be jumping the gun for a perceived, not a real, but a perceived ability for negotiation for the school district. And I don't know that that's enough for me. I'm all for selling it. I absolutely, I want to sell it. I want to sell it for a fair price. I just don't know that we know what that number is. That's my concern. And I represent the citizens of the city of Sherwood. I don't represent the school district. I represent the citizens of the city of Sherwood. And I'm concerned that we're just getting the cart before the horse on this one. Let's support the schools. Let's sell the property. Let's wait to be told what it's worth. And if it's less than that, fine. It's less, okay. Than the 130 that we negotiated. All right, I'm fine with that. We're going to sell it for the fair price that the courts say is fair. Council
Well, I'm
President?
ready to say something, and that's Kuiper.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Jennifer
Kuiper did ask first, and then I will go to you, Council President. Council Kuiper.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm actually out in the middle of a horse pasture because it's got the best reception for my cell phone.
Woo!
Yeah. So, I just want to acknowledge the concerns that Eugene Stewart had about traffic and about location of where that location of that school ended up. I too have similar concerns about traffic, although I think some of those were waylaid after talking with city staff. Susan Claus, I also understand where you're coming from in terms of price paid per acre. I can tell you that if, in fact, we do get $250,000 an acre, the school district would not be able to build that school because they can't afford $250 an acre. They probably couldn't afford any much more than what we're actually have tentatively as part of this resolution buy the property for $130. But there's something that's actually a little bit more important to me personally. While quantitative discussion is great to have, where you can actually enumerate, what are the issues and really do a great quantitative, tangible analysis of the pros and cons. That's all good to do, and that's being a good steward of taxpayer money. But there's another element that I want to inject in the conversation, and that has to do with qualitative analysis, qualitative review, and the non-tangibles. And those are things that every person on council really has to figure out. What do we identify as being a solid relationship between the city of Sherwood and the school district? Because we all know that most of the population that did vote for the bond measure, also don't understand how to de-link between city and the school district. Even though there is a very succinct de-link there, a lot of citizens do not understand that. So there is a perception issue there. I think it's time for us to show some leadership. We've acquired the property for $65,000 an acre or thereabouts. We're selling it. We are doubling our money. The school district did look at multiple locations. It would have been great if they would have looked at this much further out in the future than they had, but they didn't. There are certain things that could have happened better, but they didn't, and so here we are. So my personal opinion is we need to look at what the intangible value is that we're getting to our students, to our population, and also move forward with the work that we have to do tonight and in the future. I think this will pay dividends if we show some leadership. So that's my comment.
Council President?
I would agree with what Councilor Kuiper was saying. I also...
I don't know if your mic's on.
It is. It's just far away. I also would like to say that I think doubling our money is a pretty good deal. I think that that's a worthwhile investment, especially on the shorter term. The idea that if the school district didn't buy the property and it came into the UGB, eventually it would be worth a different amount. My house is going to be worth a different amount at some point too, but I don't get to sell it for that price today. So it's coming into the UGB because of the school at this point. Yes, eventually it would probably come in. There's no probably. It will come in eventually, but that could be 1 year, 10 years away. So I agree with Councilor Kuiper as well. At $250,000 an acre or $500,000 an acre, that makes that school unattainable. That $245 million bond was not just to build the school. I know that Edie Ridge announced at the end of the school year that it would be a 1-to-1 technology ratio at our elementary school, which is awesome. And that money is coming from the bond. So that $245 million is not strictly for the building and construction of the new high school. There's seismic upgrades going on around the district. There's investment in technology, investment in capital. That money's being used for other things. So their budget for the high school is fairly tight, and the amount that they can spend on land is pretty tight. I personally don't believe that my citizens and the ones who voted for me want me to stick it to the school district or get the most I can out of them. I believe they want me to be a partner with that school district, and they want me to get a fair value for the property and, in my opinion, do what's right for our kids and our citizens. And I think that that's subject to opinion. But my opinion is that selling it for $130,000 and doubling our money and keeping the school on track and keeping the school board on budget with their land acquisitions is important for me and important for my citizens. So I am not opposed to selling the property at $130,000. Personally, I haven't made this a secret. I would donate the land to the school district. Doesn't make me a very favorable counselor up here, but I'm just saying that I believe that if you think education is expensive, you should try ignorance. And so we need to build infrastructure in our schools and keep Sherwood. People move to Sherwood because of the schools and because of our police. Nobody ever moves to Sherwood and says, wow, what a great city council. They spend our money so well. So I think we need to focus on that and understand that people are here because of our schools and our police, and we need to invest in that and sometimes make concessions. We're not going to get rich on it, but I think doubling your money in a fairly short period of time is a good investment.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I got a couple things I guess I'd say. So, I think when you talk about the value of the land, I think when you're selling anything, the value of whatever it is you're selling is the agreed upon price that you can sell it for. I look at a Jackson Pollock painting, $5 is what I'd say. Somebody else is going to say $500,000. So, it's all a matter of what you can negotiate and agree. And we did a lot of negotiations on this, spent a lot of time on this. And I think, I had somebody reach out to me and ask me, they said, so if the land was valued at $100,000, why are you selling for $130,000? Why not $100,000? Why are you taking the school district for a ride for $30,000? Negotiations. We negotiated with the school district to come to an agreeable price, and that's what we came to. And I think, Councilor Kuiper and Councilor Harris, I'm not going to repeat what they said. I do agree with most everything they did say, except for the donating it part. But, again, I did. I moved to Sherwood here 5 years ago, and I'll try and make this brief, but we were living in Las Vegas at the time, and we were researching suburbs on the west side here, so Beaverton, Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, which I'd never heard of. And so as soon as we saw the online websites that showed the schools and the crime rates, that was it. We eliminated every other city from where we were going to look at. It took us a lot more time to find a house in Sherwood. We could have easily found something in Beaverton, probably paid a little less. But to Councilor Harris's point, it was Sherwood or nothing. And so it's because of the schools. My daughters attend Archer Glen, fantastic school. So, and they're going to be getting into high school in a few short years. So the idea of us being able to work collaboratively with the school district, find an agreeable price, get the ball moving, and get the high school built. Not only for my kids, a lot of other kids, here as well, and in the city. So I'm definitely in favor of moving forward with where we're at tonight.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes, thank you. I am in agreement with Councilor Harris, Councilor Kuiper, and Councilor Garland on many of the things that have been said. My analysis was I'd like to avoid the cost of litigation, which we would definitely have to pay if we force the school district to go to the inverse condemnation case with the other adjoining property owners. I really feel strongly about being a good partner to the school district. We serve the same community of citizens. Our roles are different, but in the same respect, the families that move here, like Councilor Garland said, do come here a lot of times because of our schools. They're top rated. So I think it's important to support that relationship, and I anticipate that they might be a little more receptive to funding half of a SRO.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. Down the road so that we have 2 SROs in our schools, because we really need that here in Sherwood. As everyone knows, that's one of my greatest requests that I would love to see. We have doubled our money, and in addition to doubling the money, Katie, what is we pay back the street fund or transportation fund. What's the balance? If we sell it at $130 an acre,
it's just over $900,000, so depending on the fees. But we'd bring in 1.9, almost 2 million, and then we need to pay back about 1.1 million because I've figured in what the interest would have accrued had we invested the funds. So we of course need to pay back with interest so that we're not taking away from the transportation fund. So a little over 900,000.
Okay, so I can think of one project in particular that we could use a portion of those funds to fund a critical piece of our city, and that is to update the comprehensive plan. And so that is my goal, is to help fund that now, because we can't wait another 10 years. Our comp plan's already out of date significantly. So I am interested in doubling our value and using those funds in part for a very important piece of the puzzle to Sherwood. The other thing that has not been mentioned is that if we play hardball with the school district, there is a possibility that if they have to go to trial with all four property owners, that this could delay their project such that they cannot start construction next year, and they'd have to delay for a year. They might start construction, before the end of that 1 year period. But the goal is, and the anticipated construction schedule is, so that we open for the fall of 2020. And if we don't get through the condemnation process with all 4 parties, that might delay the class of 2024, in which my son is one of, from entering that new school, the new high school, in 2020. So I don't know that they would move kids over from the existing high school to the new school mid-year, but I suspect it's unlikely. But nonetheless, it is a consideration.
I had a question that Councilor Robinson brought up that maybe Josh could assist. Litigation costs. What would be our litigation costs since we have you? So what would the litigation cost be?
That's a good question. And at this point, the school district hasn't, as far as I know, made any insinuation that they were planning on condemning our property specifically.
So they wouldn't have to. They could just.
Well, that would be an option. They certainly could try to condemn our property. I don't believe that anyone has suggested that we would actually do that necessarily. But if we were, expert witnesses, probably a condemnation expert, not just me. So there would be some significant cost to that.
That would be breaking new ground. With
That's
one
also,
government
that's also,
against
that's also
another
true.
government.
The school district against a city.
Yes.
I haven't found any precedent for that in Oregon as far as condemnation cases go. So it could potentially be something that would be appealed. So, the cost could be anywhere from, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars up, depending on how far that went.
So my question that I'm not hearing the answer to. This isn't the kind of litigation that I'm familiar with, and so I'm asking.
Right.
Since we are a willing seller, it's just a matter of price. Is including us in the condemnation necessary?
Well, so that's what.
So we're not saying we
that's
won't
what the purpose
sell,
of a
just that
condemnation case is to determine the price.
Okay.
So potentially there would be some reason for them to include us in that.
Okay, so it could be
that's a possibility.
that it would be. Okay,
That's a possibility.
that's what I wanted to understand.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Councilor Young, did you have? I didn't see you raise your hand. But
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to echo what Councilor Robinson, Councilor Harris, Councilor Garland, and Councilor Kuiper said, that I, too, am in agreement with this for all the same reasons, being good partners with the school district and doubling our money. And I just think trying to price a property on a hypothetical figure sometime in the future isn't something we can really pinpoint. So whether we say it's worth $500,000 or meeting in the middle at $250,000 or whatnot, we don't know. That would be a guessing game, but we have an appraisal of what it's worth today. I believe there's 2 appraisals of what it's worth today. And so I just echo, and I'm in favor of this as well.
Councilor King, did you want to say anything? You didn't raise your hand, but I just thought I'd.
Oh no, it's just frustrating. I think well, like you said, it all comes down to price, and for me, it would be easier to vote if it were a higher price. But I will vote in the affirmative to sell it, and I'll leave it at that. And at this point, we'll call the question.
Okay. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. You called the question? We didn't get a motion. I'm going to need a motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2017-054.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. City Manager?
The only item I wanted to share with the mayor and council is we will be here a week from tonight. We'll post the agenda tomorrow. It'll be a special meeting. We'll be interviewing 2 of the 3 firms that you want to interview for operating the recreational center that's currently operated by the YMCA. So a week from tonight, the YMCA will be interviewed here in this room. It'll be a work session, so it'll be open to the public, but the public cannot ask questions. It's really an opportunity for the council to ask questions of the firms that you've selected to interview. So the YMCA will be here, and Health Fitness, which is the company out of Minnesota, will be here in 2 weeks. And then we are still working on the 3rd interview with Tualatin Hills Park and Rec, and we're hopefully going to land on a date in July to have that interview. And I wanted to make sure that the folks knew that publicly tonight. So
Great.
The agenda will be posted tomorrow.
Awesome. All right.
And we still have a URA budget meeting to do.
We do. So let's, all right. So I am going to start with council announcements, but ask that everybody keep them brief because we do still have a URA meeting tonight. The only thing, we already talked about the Sherwood Wine Festival a lot. So don't miss it. It's this Friday and Saturday, June 23rd, 24th. I believe that Deb has opened up the registration for the Friday night event. It was going to be only members of the wine club, but now you can do it. You can register online. I know there's a lot of excitement about this event. It's going to be a great community event. I was in the Rollison Cellars during the art walk this week, and they were very excited about this great opportunity and had said to me that many of the vineyards in town were very happy and, really excited about. And there's also going to be food vendors. There's going to be all music. It's going to be great. So I encourage you all to go. On Monday afternoon, so yesterday afternoon, I attended Oregon State had a dedication. They wanted to give, the police. They wanted to give special awards in about the shooting incident involving Nick Cederberg, and it was fantastic. The Tuolumne Valley, the Fire and Rescue, Tuolumne Valley Fire and Rescue, they did an event where they recognized the officers, but this was a special event from the Oregon State Patrol, and I just wanted to say that Nick was there and he was walking with assistance, but it was very emotional, and he really wanted to thank not only all of the officers that heroically saved his life, and if they had not been there, by his own statement, he would not be here. But he also just wanted to thank everyone in the Sherwood community that had reached out to him, sent him letters and cards, visited him at the hospital. He said it was pretty fuzzy in the beginning, and it was very difficult to have one of the most difficult times of his life be so very public, which is something I very much understand, and it was really touching to see him with the other officers being able to thank them personally, which I'm positive he has done multiple times, but to also be able to stand there as they received their awards with their families. So I just wanted to give a shout out and thank you to Chief for for hosting that at our Sherwood Police Department. I really appreciated that. So, and Counselor Young came as well, so it was a really nice event. It was really heartfelt. If we could only get the temperature of the police room, either not hot or cold. I don't know. It's just it's a thing. So, Council President.
No senior center meeting. Our meeting is this week, but I do want to reiterate that July 3rd at noon is the grand opening, or I don't know what you want to call it, ceremony. And there is going to be lunch served, and it will be delicious. And I encourage everybody to go celebrate with us that the city will be taking over operations there. And it's a really exciting time for the seniors, and it's going to be a bumpy ride, but we'll get there and it'll be great. So, and then the Police Advisory Board meeting was great, actually, probably one of my favorite meetings. We spent a ton of time just talking about citizen engagement and a little bit of time on the police staffing study that was done last year. And we've looked, there's several options on there, and we looked at one way of meeting some of those options. And now it sounds like we're going to start looking into some other ways to meet the needs. Overall, the staffing study came back that our police department is amazing, which we already know. But there are some areas that our citizens would like to see more of. Not that we necessarily are lacking in those areas, but they want even more of it. So the Police Advisory Board is going to begin the journey of looking into other ways to meet the needs of our citizens based on some of that information. I think that's all I have from that.
Thank you.
To keep it brief, I'll
Councilor
stop.
Robinson.
Yes. Our next Park and Rec board meeting is canceled. The normal time that we have the Parks and Rec meetings is canceled because we've rescheduled that meeting. I think July 18th. Is that right, Kristen? Yes. So July 18th, mark your calendars. If you want to take a tour of the Cedar Creek Trail, the Parks and Rec board is going to go walk it with staff, and I really look forward to seeing that. The Library Advisory Board, I missed the meeting for this month, I think. And, but I am thrilled to see that Donna Vandekleeft was approved on our consent calendar today. So she's filling the last spot open on the Library Advisory Board, and we're happy to have a full board again. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Young.
So I attended last week the Sherwood School District meeting on behalf of Councilor Kuiper, who had a conflict. And it was really exciting, that meeting. They recognized 6 of their staff members that were retiring this year. It was an interesting fact. They had 3 that were up there retiring from Sherwood Middle School. And those 3 had 127 years of combined service.
Wow.
I just walked away
in
going,
middle school.
Wow. That's a lot. And then they also, Connie just snuck out, but they also recognized Connie Hansen. It was her last board meeting. She'd been on the school board for 12 years giving service. And so thank you, Connie, for doing that. And I also attended my community development block grant meeting. And what we were working on was getting the application rating sheet changes completed. They're going to a new online system where we'll be doing those ratings. And Sherwood will be hosting that next meeting in July here at our police station. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Since the last meeting I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Board meeting at the Metro Building in Portland. Some really exciting stuff going on there. They approved some new chair, vice chair, all that. And I also recently attended as the liaison for the Planning Commission, where they approved the new townhomes that are going to be going in right over here in Oregon Street. So that's a very exciting plan that they've got going as well. And Councilor Harris had mentioned this earlier, but 3 positions open on the Budget Committee. Applications due June 30th, available through the city website. So I'd like to see some names getting in there, get some new faces on the Budget Committee. That's all.
Councilor King.
Attended the cruising here in Sherwood. That was a lot of fun. Well-attended event despite the weather. It's nice that the weather does change from year to year. So next year, hopefully it'll be sunny. And I'm going to announce that next meeting will be my last meeting, and I'm discussion with our attorney, city attorney Josh. Timing-wise, it actually works out better to have me resign after the next meeting, because in that case, the election for this position won't happen until November. So the city wouldn't have to spend thousands of dollars having a special election in September. So I'm all for saving money. I can hang on for a few more days and accommodate the city in that regard. So,
Councilor Kuiper. Okay. All right. Councilor Kuiper has retired for the evening. All right. Get your beauty sleep, ma'am. All right. That's fine. All right. I will close our council meeting and I will open our urban renewal.